Welcome to the podcast Compels You, the show where we are given curse categories by our evil AI chatbot, tasked to come up with movies that fit those categories and share them with you mutant-loving metalheads. My name is Bill, and with me, as always, is my co-host Stacy. How are you, Stacy?
Doing good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. We actually just this week, we actually had a microburst by my house like 2 days ago. I just got internet back about 3 hours ago. So
Oh,
thank God. Otherwise, I would have had to go and record at my in-laws' house, which is just not the same, you know? It's not my home sweet home studio here. So
feel a little inhibited around
yeah, a
the
little
in-laws.
bit, you know, and it's creepy too because I tend to go in their office and which is also doubles as my wife's mom's sewing room. So she has all these like mannequins all around, you know, like you do with
Ooh,
sewing. Super creepy. If you get the wrong lighting in there, it will scare the shit out of you,
that
which
might be just the right atmosphere.
I'd be looking back the whole time and just totally distracted, I think. But it would be one of those where
Probably
you'd say,
not.
Bill, I see something in the corner, your screen there. It's looking at you.
What's that behind you?
What is that? Yeah, exactly. Could be its own horror movie within our show here. But it's enough of my evil horror stuff. Stacy, what have you been watching?
Not that much since we last spoke, but I did stream Oddity, which was not
Me too.
showing at a theater anywhere near me. I thought it was a decently like spooky, tight little horror story.
Yeah.
It's an Irish movie, and it's about, I would say, a psychic who makes interesting use of some cursed objects.
Yes. Very much so.
I wonder what you think about this. I did feel that it was an entry in like the true pure horror genre, which we were talking about is almost not a thing anymore.
Right. I think I would put it in that because it's not like a thriller. It's not I'm trying to think what other genres would like. No, it truly was like spooky and creepy. And one odd thing, I didn't even realize it was Irish for some reason. I read it later when I was looking at the wiki page. It's like this Irish horror movie. I'm like, I didn't even realize that was Irish. I know the guy had an
Irish
accent,
English
but
sounds almost just like American English to me, so
yeah,
I
this
don't
one
remember
didn't.
noticing either,
Yeah, it didn't jump
really.
out to me. But I will say I watched this in two halves. The first act, I guess, is really good. There's like a really spooky decision that a character has to make, which is one of those. Anytime that happens in a movie, I tend to put myself in the position. I'm like, I honestly don't know what I would pick in this case, which makes it a really cool scenario. There's not a lot of characters, but it's a very interesting plot, even so, is what I would say.
I feel like it's well, when I was watching it, like I thought I could be reading this out of a 19th century like anthology of ghost stories. And
Yes.
because like except for just a tiny bit of technology, like almost nothing would have been changed. And I kind of like that.
It's funny you say anthology. I could absolutely see this as an anthology entry. It probably a little more, it would have to be cut down maybe a little bit, but I could totally see this as like a really good director doing like an horror anthology, which would be awesome.
And I haven't delved into it at all, but I think there might be some elements of like folk horror with the wooden guy.
Okay. Yeah.
I just get the feeling, you know?
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, most definitely.
Upcoming though, I do have tickets to Afraid about the evil AI assistant.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited
And
about that.
most excitingly, I have my ticket for Beetlejuice for opening weekend. So
Woo!
I am set for the beginning of September here.
Nice. I've gone a little bit old school, actually. I watched a movie that I'm almost ashamed to say I have not watched prior to this. It's a classic. It's a deeply controversial movie, but it's also a classic, and that is Rosemary's Baby.
Wow.
I have never seen this movie, and it's one that's referenced a lot. Like, if there's any movie that remotely resembles its plot, it's like, yep, it's another Rosemary's Baby. So I'm like, all right, got to watch
Yeah.
Rosemary's Baby.
It's almost
Um,
its own genre now.
It really is. And but what a great freaking movie. You know, all of the terrible, shitty director stuff and you know, all the other crazy stuff that happens with a lot of the actors and actresses. All that aside, really good film. So happy I watched it. And it has such a cool like aesthetic to it. Just that old, like was it 70s? I want it 60s, 70s, probably.
Yeah, like late 60s or
Yeah, maybe late 60s. Kind of that hippie, we're getting to that where it's just like bright colors, accent colors and stuff. Really cool movie. Um, totally understand why it's a classic now. So I can check that one off my list.
that is actually on my list of classic horror books that haven't read that I still want to read.
I've heard that it's very close, I believe, to the book, the movie.
Yeah. The Exorcist was also on my list, and I did read that one this year.
Hmm. Is it a long one? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
average.
okay. Your average is probably different than mine. My long would be like 750 plus,
It's
maybe.
just such a all the visual stuff in the movie of The Exorcist like
Yeah,
makes it so different. So
that's true.
it wasn't exactly how I expected,
Okay.
but it's decent.
The second movie, these are just random. The second movie I saw was It Comes at Night. Did you see this one?
I can't remember. I mean, I remember that title,
Yeah.
but I
This
don't
is
remember
one
the
where I've
plot.
seen the thumbnail a million times and it looks really cool. It's got like a wolf looking dog on it and just black of night. And it has, what's the guy's name? Joel Edgerton, who's also directed some horror movies and been in them, but he's the main actor in it. And it's one of these kind of like apocalyptic survivalist type movies, which I didn't know going into it, where you have a
Oh,
family.
that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
where there's a
No, I have
family
not
and
seen it.
they're quarantined from any other families, like they have their own plot of land. And the thing I like about the movie is you never find out what the danger is because it's all very much within this. Like there's just two families and they're trying to like suss each other out and figure out if they can exist in this post-apocalyptic world. And yeah, we don't know what they're hiding from, but thought it was a pretty decent movie. Kind of middle of the road, I'd say, but definitely kept my attention. It's kind of reminded me of like The Walking Dead a little bit, where there was a lot of just like going to this place and this place, and
Mhm.
which I only watched the first few seasons of The Walking Dead. I couldn't make it all the way. Did you watch any of that?
I made it one season and one episode, and then I was like, no, I think I'm done.
Yeah. Well, I think you pretty much got the basics. What do you call them? Plot beats,
I
because it
figured
happened in pretty much every one that I watched of the
there's only so
season.
much you can do.
It really is. Yeah. But those are the only two I really watched as of last week. But I'm still trying to dig through the classics. I've got a lot of catching up to do. So if you have any old classic Rex, let me know because I'm
Think
still
about
working
that one.
backwards. Yeah, let me know.
There sure are a lot of Dracula movies that you could watch.
Yeah,
There's
that's
like
true.
there's like a major vampire like subgenre for like every decade, I
Oh
think.
wow, nice. All right, I can do some vamps. So I believe that takes us to tonight's film. Stacy, do you want to introduce our categories? I guess remind our listeners of our categories and what film we'll be talking about tonight.
Tonight we bring you part two of Sinister Slayers with a supernatural something, which is what I'm calling our two-part series exploring the cursed category of movies that feature regular human murderers working in tandem with a supernatural evil of some kind. In part one of the series, we reviewed this year's Nicolas Cage hit Longlegs. While
Woo!
our levels of enthusiasm differed over that one, I think it's safe to say that we both recommended it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch.
This episode's movie is the 2015 horror suspense The Devil's Candy, written and directed by Australian Sean Byrne, who has only one other feature film to his name, and that would be 2009 Australia horror The Loved Ones. The Devil's Candy is an American movie, though, set in rural Texas. Interesting choice. And actually filmed in Williamson County, which is in central Texas, just north of Austin. The Devil's Candy stars Ethan Embry, who appeared in some teen comedy cult classics such as Empire Records in the
Yeah.
1990s, and has continued acting pretty regularly, a lot of not so famous movies, a lot of TV. Embry plays the father character, Jesse, in this movie, and also starring the mom as the mom character, Sherry Appleby. Her character's name is Astrid. Appleby has had roles in several movies, but primarily has been a television workhorse since age 4. She even appeared in one episode of the very short-lived Freddy's Nightmares, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the series in 1988.
Nice.
The Devil's Candy also stars Kiera Glasgow as the daughter Zoe and character actor Pruitt Taylor Vince as the bad guy Ray. Boo! This movie premiered at the 2015 Toronto International Film Festival Its US premiere was at Fantastic Fest that same month. It enjoyed a limited theatrical release in March of 2017 by IFC Midnight, and it's available on a variety of streaming platforms. Also, the guy who plays Leonard the art dealer,
Mhm.
just found out. I was like, he looks famous. Who is that? Tony Amendola, who played a priest in Annabelle from the Conjuring universe, and
Oh,
also a
okay.
priest in The Curse of La Llorona.
Hmm.
So he might be the most famous, like, recognizable horror actor face in the
Yeah.
movie. Not sure.
Hmm.
So, a quick spoiler-free synopsis of this movie is starving artist Jesse Hellman thinks he and his wife have closed on the perfect country home and such an amazing price. What's up with
Hmm.
that? Well, it turns out previous tenant may have lowered the property value with some very bad vibes. Jesse quickly gets to work on his next destined to be underappreciated painting. Then he starts hearing some sinister voices and his art takes a disturbing turn. Meanwhile, the previous tenant also starts showing up at the house. A, friendly heavy metal type fellow who just wants to be friends with the couple's underage daughter. No big deal. While tensions crank up to 11 as the Hellmans are plunged into a pretty much worst nightmare scenario. Can Jesse get his head straight and protect his family, or will the devil get his candy after all? Bill, had you seen the devil's candy before?
Never seen it, never heard of it, but thank you for sharing it with me. I will say that preemptively here.
It was such a nice thing to do considering it is not my type of movie at all. Not really. I saw this one on streaming last year, and it was one of the weekly picks for the official Dreaded Film Club, which I joined for a short time, and it may have disbanded for all I know. I'm not sure. I don't seem to be getting their notifications anymore. Maybe I was kicked out for not liking like Lake Mungo or something, or for being an unapologetic raging feminist. I don't know. I do have some content warnings. The Devil's Candy prominently features violence and gore, including violence against children, as well as frightening and intense scenes, some involving children. An adult character has an unhealthy interest in a young teenage girl, which I think I mentioned, and there are related stalking behaviors. There is one scene of arguable child neglect, actually, two scenes now that I'm thinking about it. There's kidnapping, people die, and let me reiterate one more time that there is violence against children. You could argue that a person with an ostensible intellectual disability who may or may not be mentally ill is portrayed as unhinged and violent, which may or may not be problematic. I'll revisit this topic at the end of the episode. There is one particular trigger warning that I'm holding back on purpose because it spoils the end of the movie. But as always, we recommend you check doesthedogdie.com and search for any specific triggers you might have. Beware of spoilers. Over to you, Bill.
Wow, that was comprehensive. By the way, I'm glad you didn't ask me for my three things I expected to see because holy shit, was I far off on that.
Oh, completely forgot. Would you like to say them or not? I'll give you one pass.
I just called myself out on this. I'm just going to say them. They're terrible. They did not go at all. So, based on the very short description of the IMDb page, I expected to see a character discovers a hidden room, a character finds something shocking out about a relative, and a creepy child's toy.
I could see number two being sort
Like
of.
a relative. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's relatively relative, unfortunately.
that's
Anyway,
terrible.
I was gonna say I totally struck out on this, but I still had fun doing it. I have to like really try to dig into my mind to figure out three things for these movies. The most thinking I do all week. Let's just put it that way.
Good effort. Good effort.
Yeah. I think that takes us to our dark fact.
Dark fact.
So today's dark fact is about a rare condition called prosopometamorphosia, where those affected see faces in a disturbingly distorted demonic way. People with this condition often perceive eyes and mouths as unnaturally stretched, ears as pointed, and some faces as, quote, like clocks in a Dali painting, or kaleidoscopically changing. Others have reported seeing faces morph into dragons or fish heads, or ears popping out from the tops of people's heads. Terrifying stuff. Some even describe seeing shortened arms attached to faces, eyes leaving the skull and rotating in front of it, or third eyes in the middle of foreheads. So just wild, trippy stuff. There's only been about 81 reported cases, so it's obviously extremely rare. Due to its rarity, many people with this condition are often misdiagnosed with schizophrenia, leading to treatment with antipsychotic medication or institutionalization. Researchers believe that this condition can result from brain injury, tumors, infections, or seizures. The crazy article I was reading about it, though, was about one specific person who I think was in his 30s, and this condition just popped up out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, his roommate walked into the room and looked like a demon, and then his girlfriend walked into the room, same thing. And ever since, he's suffered from this. Absolutely wild. If you're interested, go online. I'll try to spell this out somewhere. But they worked with one of the people that had this condition to like come up with like visually what it looks like, trying to describe it. And there's some crazy pictures online of what these people, see on a daily basis. So I don't know. Stacey, have you heard of that before?
No, but it's so interesting and terrifying. And is it wrong that I wish I could like put on glasses and just see what it
Yes.
looks like for just a
Oh,
little
absolutely.
while?
I was just thinking that same thing.
Excuse me, can I try on your disability?
Just for a minute. Yeah, probably quickly throw them back off again. But yeah, totally
Undoubtedly.
wild. And I'm so glad I don't suffer from that because that sounds terrifying. Anyway, we are going to go ahead and move on to our intermission. When we get back, we will be doing a spoilerific plot discussion of The Devil's Candy. So stick around. Welcome back to the podcast Compels You. We are now going to dive into our spoilerific discussion of The Devil's Candy. We open on a man sleeping with creepy, unintelligible voice muttering in his head. Get used to this because this happens a lot in this movie.
The same words over and over.
Yes, over and over. The man gets out of bed and starts playing heavy guitar chords while staring at a crucifix. I'm not sure it gets any more metal than this. I'm going to be probably saying that a lot during this movie. This is just metal to the core.
I thought the scene was really effective.
Yes. There's just something about it's very simply shot. And you just, again, you don't know what's going on, which I always love when they just throw you into the mix with a cold opening like this. And first thing I realized was this was the actor from Identity. Do you remember that movie Identity from, gosh, I don't even know, maybe mid 2000s, something like that?
I do not, but apparently he's been in a lot of things.
He has. So Identity was based on what's the Agatha Christie novel, the famous one?
There's
The
a lot
10
of
Little
them.
Indians?
That's one.
Yeah, that's the one it's based on. So it's one of those, but it's got a psychological twist. Really good movie. John Cusack's in it, but that's where I
Oh,
recognize this guy from. So he's rocking out on the guitar, just playing like these droning guitar chords, which will get very familiar to you, which, by the way, is a B diminished, I believe. I was playing
oh,
it
very
earlier.
good. I thought it was such an interesting choice to have him just play one chord. Like
Yes.
it's way more disturbing because you expect he's going to be like some kind of heavy metal rocker and he's going to
Uh-huh.
start noodling, but nope,
It's always
nope.
simplicity that works with horror music or, scores, I think.
Yeah.
So a woman comes into the room and tells him that daddy is taking him back to the hospital. So we're assuming that this must be his sister, I guess.
It's actually his mother, but she
Oh,
looks
no, it
so
is the
young. It
mother.
was hard for me to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because later we find out. Yeah, so I guess the mother comes in and basically threatens him, basically saying, we're going to take you back to the hospital. As she heads toward the stairs, he bashes her over the head with his Gibson Flying V guitar.
Let's call it Chekhov's flying V guitar.
Chekhov's Flying V guitar. Oh, yeah, we get a lot of this, and it's great. We get those continuous, like discordant chords as Daddy just stands staring. Daddy walks in the front door, and he's kind of like, what the fuck? But also, oh man, I know what happened. There's kind of like both looks on his face at the
Yeah,
same time. And I put in my notes that opening does not fuck around. They just jump right into this, which I appreciate.
we certainly do.
I think we get a title card there.
Did you notice the title card letters are like flames?
Inflamed. Yes. Will that mean anything, do you think?
Maybe, could
Maybe.
possibly. I mean, everything means something, doesn't it?
I think so. We cut to a man painting while listening to the great guitar tapping part in Metallica's Am I Evil. I had to look all these songs up because I'm like, I totally recognize these, but I can't put a name to them. And it's Jesse, who's what's Embry? What's his first name? Ethan?
Ethan.
Ethan Embry, who I don't know about you, but this guy has showed up in a lot of my favorite movies, including That Thing You Do. Did you ever see That Thing You Do?
No, I never
Oh,
watched stuff like that.
feel good movie by Tom Hanks. He plays a bass player. He is fantastic. But Ethan Embry looks like Jesus Christ in this movie, and it is awesome. Every
Also,
scene.
he never stops sweating.
Yeah,
Uh,
really, really wet this whole movie.
Also, like, while I'm not always the best groomed human being, like, I do feel if he isn't going to take a shower for the duration of this thing, like, I just wish he would run a comb through his hair.
Just something. Yeah. Well, his wife even jokes, she's like, are you going to take a shower before this thing? And he's like, yeah. So we assume he takes a shower. In the next scene, we see him driving, and he looks just as like oily and dirty
Yep.
and messy as you'd imagine.
I mean, they did really film it in Texas, so
Yeah, I'm guessing a little hot down there.
there's
Would you
only
say?
so much you can do.
Yeah, that's true. Jesse's wife, whose name I believe is it
Astrid,
Astrid. The thing I recognize her from is Swim Fan. Do you remember that movie?
I do remember Swim Fan,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh. If you rewatch
a
that,
long
that
time
is a
ago.
so bad it's good gem these days. It's such a weird movie, but she plays like the really sweet girlfriend that gets fucked over in that movie like over and over again.
That's right.
Um, this has a great cast, this film. I gotta say, for being kind of like an indie, low budget kind of movie, they got a
Right.
lot of really good actors in this.
Yes.
So Jesse, his daughter and his wife are driving. We don't quite know where they're going yet, but you can already tell Jesse and his daughter, whose name is
Zoe.
Zoe. Thank you. Jesse and his daughter Zoe are just like the cutest you could imagine. They're both metalheads. I get the impression the mom kind of just like puts up with it, but is not like that
Yeah.
into metal. But this family is so damn cute. Like,
This scene is so cute. The
yes,
are headbanging exactly alike in the
yes.
car.
And so much of this movie would be so cheesy, but like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the actors and actresses. It's heartwarming in like the best possible way. So they're driving, and we find out that they're going to check out the house from the opening scene, which is now up for sale. So this is a young family trying to move out of their apartments and trying to buy their first house. They are greeted by a cowboy, which I didn't know this movie was filmed in Texas. So I'm like,
Uh,
what is this
all
guy doing?
houses in Texas just come with a cowboy that sells it.
Right. Yeah, just ominous
Yeah.
cowboy. The cowboy is the realtor, and he is walking them through the house, showing them everything. And he says, I got to tell you, there were two people that died in this house. And he really downplays it. He says, a
Sure
sweet old
does.
lady who accidentally fell down the stairs, and her dear old hubby who couldn't stand to live without her.
I mean, maybe that's all anybody knew.
Yeah, maybe. Yes, that's the official report.
So I fact checked the requirement in Texas to disclose death on a
Uh huh.
property. Turns out a seller is not required to disclose the death by natural causes, suicide, or accident unrelated to the condition of the property. A seller is required to disclose if they believe supernatural or demonic elements caused a death, or if there was a murder.
Oh,
And
okay.
just a side note, 4 out of 10 Americans believe ghosts and demons exist. That was from a YouGov.com survey in 2019. So,
4 out of 10.
yeah.
That sounds about right to me, actually. I was gonna, maybe three, I would say, but four makes sense.
I wonder how often disclosures of like demonic or supernatural influence deaths are made.
Oh, that's super fascinating. Thank you for that legal what
Anytime.
would you call it? Yeah, there you go. The couple already knows, like, yep, it's been on the market for a while. Clearly, there's a reason why this house is so cheap, but whatever. Doesn't really bother them at all.
Did you notice when they're like, we need a moment and they're talking alone? And there's a really nice foreshadowing with Jesse being like,
Can you hear that?
what?
Wait, shh. That right there. Jesse! You can't hear that. I can't hear that. Baby. You don't hear that. Because it's screaming at me. I can't ignore it.
Yeah, the house is going to be talking to you pretty soon.
Watch out. We then cut to the man from the opening, who we find out's name is Ray, who's wearing an awesome Adidas red tracksuit throughout, I think, pretty much the whole movie. He is going to a motel and acting super creepy and kind of like paranoid in the lobby. He's like looking through the window, just not the kind of dude you want to be dealing with like late at night as a motel, service person. So we kind of cut back and forth. We cut to Jesse and Astrid discussing how they will afford the house while smoking a joint. Again, just another super sweet scene in the apartment.
I do feel bad for Astrid in this situation because it turns out she's the only stable financial backer of this whole
What does
family.
she do? They mention it. Is it a salon does she work at?
I don't think they ever say,
Maybe
but
they don't.
she does have like a stable salary, but
Yeah.
like it's not very much. And
No.
it sort of seems like they took out this mortgage on a gamble that like, Leonard the art dealer was really gonna like whatever Jesse was gonna do
Right.
next,
Yes, absolutely.
which I think he didn't. So,
Well, I gotta say, and maybe it's too early to say this, but I really like that they didn't get too sidetracked with all like the art business stuff. I feel like they could have
oh
really
yeah,
gone too much
yeah,
with that, but I'll talk
I
about
do
that more as
appreciate
we
that.
go
I
through.
also appreciate that like one financial concern seems to
Hmm.
be the only dysfunctional element of this family, which is so
Yes,
unusual in
they
a
are
horror
super
movie.
solid, and even under
They
like
like,
duress, like you'll find out later, like they're just a
yeah.
solid trio, I gotta say.
And they're the kids, a nice kid
Hmm.
and not all like my parents suck.
Yeah,
That was nice.
it's refreshing to see. So then we get a moving montage, which almost made me
Heavy
laugh a little
metal
bit.
moving
Yes, heavy metal
montage.
moving montage. And the song continually repeats already dead, which I thought was kind of interesting. That was like it was almost like a record skip. It just kept saying already dead, already dead. But yeah, the moving montage was hilarious because it's like what you'd see in like a romantic comedy or something, but with heavy metal music, which I appreciated. Ray is now in a motel room, rocking out again with his flying V and his giant Marshall amp. And of course, the sheriff comes knocking on the door and says, we got a call about some loud music. And as the sheriff's talking, Ray starts blocking his voice out, and we start to hear that same satanic voice again.
That's like when it gets really established that when Ray doesn't play the guitar, he
Yes.
hears the voice. And I was like noticing it was the same thing over and over. And I was going to ask you if it was German, but it turns out that it's Hungarian and it's from a heavy metal song. And I have no idea what it says, but I'd like to
Oh,
know.
fun. I forgot to look that up. Hungarian metal. Interesting.
Yeah, Hungarian is kind of a creepy sounding language.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
Well,
similar
used
to
in this
German,
way.
isn't it? I would imagine it's in the
Think
same
so?
realm, maybe not. In terms of like it's the sound of it, not necessarily I don't know. I don't know anything about Hungarian.
It's either Hungarian or Bulgarian that is like not related to anything, and I always forget
Oh,
which one is which.
oh man.
I think it may be Hungarian.
I gotta do some
Or it's like
research on this.
it's not related to anything that you would expect. It's
Right,
only
within the same
relatives or
region.
like distant. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So anyway, Ray's in there. The sheriff comes. He's basically like, now, Ray, are you gonna, tone it down a little bit? And he even says, now, Ray, I want you to say it back to me now. Say it back to me, which I thought was kind of shitty of him. It almost was like, the guy who's got some problems, and he's treating him like a child.
He is kind of like a child though.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, don't you get that from that interaction? I also
Oh yeah.
wondered, based on what they say later, like, does this, because it's a small town, does this sheriff deputy guy, does he know who Ray is?
I have a lot of problems with what you just not problems with what you said, but along those same lines, for
Yeah.
sure. There's if I
One
were
big
to poke
problem with the
one hole in
movie.
that movie, it's
Yeah.
going to have to do with that. Exactly.
Same, same, same.
Anyway, we cut to Jesse now driving Zoe to her new school. She's obviously nervous, and Jesse gives her a pep talk, and which ends with, "Don't let school get in the way of your education," which I thought was just awesome. Like, hey kid, you got to go to school, but I understand. Like just super sweet relationship between those two.
Yeah.
Back at the house, Jesse starts hearing the satanic voice for the first time and is led upstairs to Zoe's room. He then, like again, still being led, pulls down the ghost poster to find the outline of the crucifix from the beginning of the movie, the one that Ray was staring at. And I think it falls and turns upside down, right? Is
It
that
sure does.
yeah, which maybe I left out at the beginning, which is a nice little touch.
So fun.
Jesse begins aggressively working on a new piece of art until nighttime. So this is where he starts to kind of get like the possessed artist, like he's driven to make art again, or to go a different direction. Because at the beginning of the movie, he's working on a commission by I think it's like a bank or something where it's like a bunch of butterflies. And he makes the thing like joke about like, yeah, not everyone likes metal, So now we're getting to see him like truly passionate about his art again. And I'm sure he'll make really beautiful art that won't be troublesome at all.
Not at all.
As he's doing this, again, he's working till nighttime. Astrid comes home and Zoe tells her that her first day of school sucked, as you'd imagine. And then Astrid goes out to see Jesse in the studio. And while she's talking to him, again, he starts to get that muted sound again, just like Ray was getting, when he wasn't playing his guitar. Not a good sign.
We back up just a moment.
Yes, by all means.
Astrid tells Zoe it's gonna get better. Astrid is lying to Zoe. It's fucking rural Texas public school. I might know a thing or two about this. It is definitely not gonna get any better. Ever.
That's where Jesse has such a better outlook on it. Like, again, he knows. He's like, just got to get through it, kid.
They might consider homeschooling. I don't know.
Yeah, usually sounds crazy, but I mean, if the conditions are right for it. So that was your local Texas interjection there?
Correct.
I should have asked you before we started whether you'd have more of those, because we could have a whole section for Texas interjections.
Ah.
I think it would be great.
Yeah.
So again, Jesse's starting to get the little muted thing going on, and then all of a sudden he snaps out of it, and we are shown the painting that he's been working on, which is an upside down cross. Imagine that. Interesting fact, there's actually all of the art done in this movie was done by a self-ascribed Satanist artist who actually passed away like 2 or 3 years ago. Sadly, I was reading up on him.
Did he explode?
He did not explode. It was just kind of a boring death, but he was super young when he died, and all of his artwork is like really kind of interesting to look at. So look him up. So he unveils his upside down cross, and then the doorbell rings. And who's at the door? It's Ray, our best friend Ray, in his awesome Adidas red tracksuit. And unfortunately, Zoe opens the door, and he immediately sees like the flying V, I guess, tattoo, like temporary tattoo on Zoe's arm, and says that he has one of those. Then, of course, Jesse comes to the door, kind of wondering what the hell's going on, and Ray says,
I need to come home now. This is Mommy and Daddy's house. They're dead.
Jesse tells him to leave, and Ray says that they won't let him play it loud. So he is just in his own world. He desperately needs to play his guitar so that the devil is not inside his head. And Jesse closes the door, and Ray continues to ring the doorbell. Jesse threatens to call the police, and then Ray finally leaves. And then Zoe and Astrid feel that he was a little too harsh to Ray, which I don't know.
I did feel a little bad for Ray the first time I saw this movie. I mean, because all we know is he pushed his mom down the stairs. We know that he's like possibly possessed if this demon shit is real. And all he wants to do is play his guitar and drown out the sound, but he's got nowhere to do that. And he's got the like mentality of a child.
Do you think it's his like physical stature that would be more the reason why Jesse would be kind of like, because I mean he's a big guy, obviously. He's
I think any adult guy coming to your door, like talking to your daughter, is gonna have but it's probably more perceived as more of a threat.
Yeah.
Just because of his physicality.
Yeah, no, I kind of thought the opposite. I'm like, honestly, I felt like, I mean, it would be nice if he offered to like help. I don't know if he did it all, but like, I don't even know what you would do. Call a hospital? Like,
there's nothing. No, we have no, what's the word? Social safety net, which is not something that we ever say because it doesn't exist.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, they used to have public mental health institutions. Guess this is back in like the 80s, maybe. I want to say, and like they weren't nice places, but like they also decided to close them all, and then they dumped all of the mentally ill people like out on the streets.
I've heard this in other cities too.
Yeah, so they all ended up in like Austin because that's the nicest place to be homeless.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so sad.
A lot of them, not all of them, I should say.
Anyway, I pull it together. Get out of our
Texas interjections.
Texas interjections. So Ray ends up leaving, and then we cut to like this really cheesy Christian program that's playing on what turns out to be Ray's motel television there. And it's one of those old school programs talking about Satan, kind of riling up the troops. I'm sure you donate money. It's one of those, what do you call them? Televangelists. Kind of the early days of that.
Good call.
The early days.
Do you think he's trying to fix himself? What's your take on this?
Good question. Like what? Because he constantly watches this program. Basically, for the rest of the movie, anytime he's in his
Yeah.
motel, he's watching this, and it's like a variety of, um, what do you call them? Services. Like there'll be like live Christian services. It'll also be a televangelist. I don't know. I don't know if I have enough background on him because I wonder if it's something like from his childhood or something. That to me would make the most sense. Like he was raised in a very religious household or something, and this type of programming was always on. And if he's got the mind of a child, maybe it was like Arrested Development, and that's where his mind stopped at that age, whatever he was watching this programming with like his parents. That's to me. I think it was more of a comfortable thing in my mind, even
Makes
though
sense.
something like that. But I don't know. What do you think?
I was thinking maybe that was it. Like he knows that he has a spiritual problem
Hmm.
and he doesn't have any friends in the world. He has trouble talking to people.
Right.
So I think he's doing like the only thing that he knows to do to see if he can fight those demons off.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. The next scene we get is we get the Jesse is on his laptop, like uploading his artwork, and right next to his laptop, we see an overdue water bill next to him. This is
Mhm.
one of those great tropes. It's the show don't tell. I'm not going to say I'm
Yeah.
broke, but look at this water bill next to me. They're starting to pile up. Um, it didn't bother me much, but it always makes me chuckle when you see those scenes.
It's better than hearing them argue about it, I
It's
think.
true. Yeah, the show don't tell every time. Let's do that. It's a visual medium, right? The next morning, Jesse and Zoe walk outside, and what's sitting there for them? A flying V and a Marshall lamp by the gate. So, of course, Zoe's like super excited, like any kid would be, just dismissing, like, where did this come from? And Jesse has to break it to her that she can't have them. Wow.
So I have a question, a big question here.
Oh, big one. Okay.
And I didn't think of this until the second watch. And maybe you're going to say, oh, that's obvious. But
Hmm.
so is Ray in the act of offering the guitar and the amp to Zoe? Is that him like officially giving up on drowning out the demonic voices?
That's not obvious. I didn't even think of that. For some reason, I thought his guitar amp was like a larger amp at the beginning. I don't know why I thought, maybe I have to rewatch it. I thought it was like a half stack Marshall, whereas the one that he gives her is like a combo amp, like a little one speaker thing. I might be totally wrong on that. Maybe it
Maybe
is
that's
just
all
his
he was
rig.
able to move out with or something,
Yeah,
you know?
something. Okay, but yeah, I like your thought there. So this was like his big attempt.
Yeah, this is a big turning point for his character in the
Right.
movie
Uh-huh.
because, well, I won't get ahead of you. How about that?
Sure. No, but I'm gonna keep that in mind though. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. The next scene we get is at a fancy art gallery where Jesse is pleading with the gallerist or like the gallerist's assistant to look at his work again. And he says that he's never had a muse like this before and it just kind of flowed through him. So he hands her a flash drive. And after looking at them, she tells him that she'll see what he can do.
You get a weird vibe from this place.
Yes, I mean, it was like the only like slick environment in this. Like, slick is kind of like the
Uh-huh.
word I get. Even
Yeah.
like the school doesn't look like this slick. This looks like it's like a big city art gallery. And this woman's makeup was like crazy. I don't know what was going on. She had these crazy like eyelash things that I couldn't even, or no, there was earrings. These like weird earrings that did not look like earrings. I'm terrible with female fashion, but I was just like, this woman looks like she's from space. But apparently it's enough to get her to give this to, I guess, her boss, how does that work in the art world? She'd be the gallerist? He'd be the curator or something? I don't even
Oh,
know.
good question. I've just been calling him the art dealer because I really don't know how
All
that
right, we're
works.
going to go with art dealer for both of these two because I can't figure it out.
She's like the assistant, I think.
Yeah, okay. Back in the studio, Jesse stares at a blank canvas while we see Ray sitting in his car watching two people walking down the street. These end up being kind of like younger, teenage, maybe slightly younger boys. And this right there, that's creepy to me. I mean, you don't have to do much when it comes to this stuff to just creep me out big time. Just him sitting in his car. I think he's like muttering and stuff and just watching these boys walk to like a park area. And then he walks up to the two young boys who are playing fetch with their dog, Rocky. And Ray grabs a rock and kills, I think, the younger boy or hits the younger boy in the head with the rock. I got a little confused by these two and their
He
fate.
I think he lures the dog out somehow, and I was really
Yeah.
afraid he was gonna kill the dog.
Yeah, no,
Is
the
that
dog's fine
sad
now.
that I was relieved about the dog?
I think it's
But
natural.
then Yeah. So that leaves like the younger boy alone on the swings, and that's when
So it's only the younger boy that he hits over the head, and I think he
yeah, the
kills him, I
older boy
think.
is off looking for the dog, I believe.
Okay. Oh, good. For some reason, I thought that he had killed both of them. So yay, only one. Um, you got to take the celebrations where you can.
Only on the podcast compels you.
He only killed one. While this happens, we see Jesse has painted that boy's face, and I think that shows maybe a couple of other young kids' faces. I'm not sure at this point. So that's part of this grand painting that he's been working on. Realizing what time it is, he races to pick up Zoe from school. This kind of becomes like a trend here. He's like has a hard time because he keeps getting into the zone, his artistic zone. And he keeps forgetting to pick up
I
Zoe
think it happens
a couple times.
twice, and
Yeah, maybe
then
it's twice.
yeah.
So he's definitely consumed, of course, by what's going on with his muse. And as a consolation, he lets her keep the guitar, which I'm like, good move, good move.
I love the scene with Zoe rocking out on the flying
Yes.
V. Oh my
Uh-huh.
God. And she doesn't know how to play a lick,
No,
but she is 150% committed.
she has got the attitude for it. Just doesn't know the notes yet.
She's got the whole act. She's got the
Yes.
choreography. Got to learn to play like 3 chords and she'll be good.
I was Zoe at one point when I was very young, so this definitely resonated with me. You
Another
just want
fellow
that
Zoe
ring.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And maybe that's why this movie just totally got me. Something about that character. So Ray has kidnapped and brought the boy back to his hotel room. Is he dead? I don't even know if it matters. Is he even dead by this point?
No, I think because we hear him making struggling noises.
Okay.
I think he
Thank
just
you
got
for
knocked
reminding
out.
me.
Yeah.
Okay. So he puts on a garbage bag and grabs a handsaw and continues to watch the Christian program. Again, this program's just on all the time in his motel room. And we get cuts between Ray cleaning up the blood and Jesse painting, which I thought was a really kind of, you know, very simple kind of device they used here. Because you get him washing paint off, and then you also get the blood that's in the bathtub. Just really effective, I thought. The faces of the boys that he painted seem to haunt him. He's like just really just way into this artwork at this point. And one of the kids in the painting is Zoe, which Astrid finds alarming, understandably so. And he says that he can't destroy it because it's not finished yet. So this thing has pretty much taken him over at this point. He says that the children are inside him, begging and screaming to be let out, which pretty
So if you
terrifying.
were Astrid, would
Yeah.
you take that as a normal everyday like, oh, my husband's such a weird artsy type, or would you want to call someone? Is that a normal thing to say in any interpretation?
The words definitely not. That's a bit much. I mean, if you can't peel yourself away to have a cup of coffee or something, yeah, you probably need some help, I would say.
I mean, there's losing track of time, but then there's also like losing track
Muttering
of
crazy
hours and
shit.
hours, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's a little weird. So now Ray shows back up at the house and pulls a shovel and a suitcase out of his trunk. Meanwhile, Jesse is dreaming about Zoe burning. Again, just it's all inside his head. And he goes to his studio to destroy the painting, but stops as he starts to hear the voice again. So this thing is in his head completely 100%. We then see Ray digging up multiple suitcases and putting the new one in the same hole. And this is on his property, or well,
His
Jesse's
old
property,
property. Yeah.
formerly. Yeah. So then Jesse continues to work on the painting instead of destroying it. And this next scene, holy crap, this is creepy.
Holy
So
shit.
we
Yeah.
cut to Zoe sleeping, and then Ray just crawls into like the space next to her on the bed and
So
says
they're
he
face to
wanted it.
face.
What's it? Yeah, face to face.
Yeah.
Totally creepy. I feel like it took her a while to realize that he was there.
It took her a while to wake up.
Yeah. He says,
He wanted it to be you. I wouldn't let him. Because you're the special one.
just rambling wildness here. He pleads with her not to make him do that thing to her. And then she screams and her mom comes running. And Ray runs into Jesse on his way out of the house and like knocks him over. So he just gets away, I think, at this point, and they call the police, of course, and they're talking to the policewoman, and Jesse's feeling like it's all his fault, of course,
It
like
is.
any father in this case. Yeah, kind of it is. Okay, fair
Well,
enough.
also like I think he slipped in because Jesse left the door unlocked when he was working on his art. But also
Oh, that's
they
interesting.
admit
Yeah.
they admit to the cops that they have not changed the locks even
Which,
though
come
Ray has already
on.
visited once and demonstrated perhaps not being the most stable guy.
Yeah, that's homeowner 101 there. You got to change the locks.
The three of them are just kind of a little bit innocent, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The policewoman recommends they change the locks and move into a hotel for a few days. Zoe is understandably scared as Jesse sits in the window with a baseball bat. He sees some crazy stuff like a goat walking around outside, and then a vision of Ray walking up to the walkway. And the next morning, Zoe insists on going to school because it's safer than home, which I thought was a really interesting line. Like, this girl who hates school so much would prefer that
Yeah,
over this
it was
insanity.
quite the indictment.
Yes, exactly. And now in this crazy roller coaster of a movie, Jesse then gets a call from Mara, the gallerist, to tell him that the main art dealer approves of his new art and asks to visit the studio in the afternoon. So after this terrible thing happens, he gets this great phone call. This movie is just like up and down. He likes his new work, calling it wonderfully disturbing, and Jesse tells him it almost killed him, which I thought was kind of a fun little conversation. And then this is such a weird part. So he looks at his watch and he insists that he has to go pick up his daughter rather than continue the meeting. And the art dealer gives him this like hoity-toity, like, well, we all have to make sacrifices. You know, art is sacrifice, all this bullshit. And Jesse's like, nope, see ya. So he he hauls ass out of the house in his car, blows a tire.
He has an accident, doesn't he?
Well, he tries to go around a car and yeah, I guess he does. Yeah, he kind of like goes into a
The
ditch because
accident
he's
maybe causes the blowout. That's
yeah,
how
I think
I
that's right.
understood it.
Hmm. So he gets to the school acting like a crazy man, like a crazy Jesus running through this school looking for his daughter.
Of course, he's late again.
Yep, he's late again, unfortunately. Zoe's not there, and we get a bunch of weird cut shots to the mom finding out that Zoe's missing. I don't know. This
Yeah.
was really odd. It was like a bunch of really stark shots.
It was much better than doing it this way than having to hear all the dialogue about
That's
Zoe's
true.
missing. Oh my God. Have you called the hospital?
This movie is incredibly efficient. I will say
Very
that because
efficient.
I think it comes in at like an hour 20 altogether,
Yeah. Like
which is perfect.
maybe even a little shorter than that.
Yeah, you might be right. Because what does that have to be a feature film? Is it like 70 or 80? It must be 80 minutes, I'm guessing. There's like a certain cutoff which makes it actual
I
feature
think you might
film.
be right. Yeah.
Maybe 70 or 80.
70 or 80.
I'll have to look it up.
Or maybe it's just longer than an hour. Can't remember.
Oh,
But,
okay.
for a movie with candy in the title,
Yeah.
nice to have its little trim package.
By the way, before I forget to ask you, what would the devil's candy be? What kind of candy do you think the devil would prefer?
Definitely Sour Patch Kids.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Think he likes sour.
I think so.
I was gonna go with those what are the cinnamon ones?
Red Hots?
Red Hots. I was gonna go Red Hots. I was gonna go with the standard
No,
classic Red Hots.
that's if you interpret it as like the classic Hallmark Halloween devil that's red with
Oh,
a
absolutely. That's
pointed
my
tail
devil.
and a pitchfork. Yeah. I like that guy too. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a mustache too, in my
There's
mind.
room for all kinds of devils in this world, Bill.
Yours is just a sour candy eating devil.
See, my devil is so hardcore that the sour is just sweet to him. Like regular sweet doesn't do it for him.
Oh, I like that. You've given this thought. That's smart. Anyway, Zoe wakes up with tape on her mouth and just all taped up, and she's in the bathroom, I believe, at this point, with Ray
Oh,
standing above her.
this is so painful.
He puts his finger on her cheek and then tastes it, which I'm like, ugh, just there's certain things in movies that they just hit really badly. That's one of them.
Yeah.
And then he says,
He's right. You're the sweetest candy of them all. I have to do that thing I don't want to do now.
ugh.
So please don't do any things that you
Every
don't
time
like,
he
Ray.
says that, don't like it. Not for me. And then she looks over and there's a suitcase next to her. That's not a good sign.
Never a good sign.
And he leaves the room to get his trusty old handsaw from the bedroom and watches a little more of his Christian program.
Thank goodness he takes a TV break. Good job, Ray.
Yes, absolutely. Meanwhile, Zoe's able to free herself.
Oh my God, she's such a badass.
We get this great, like, chugging metal music, too. That's what I love. This whole film is soundtracked by metal, which is great. And if we get the whole thing where she goes out the window, Ray grabs her foot and the shoe falls off and she gets away. Whew. Thank goodness.
I'd like to take a little moment to say, because you brought up a good point, that the whole movie is full of metal.
Yeah.
And never at any point is it the metal that's satanic, right?
Right. That's true.
Isn't that nice? Because, complete reversal of all the stereotypes from the 80s, all the satanic panic.
That's true. Good point. It's reviving metal, putting it back in God's good light or something.
Or something.
So she frees herself, and then meanwhile, at the police station, the police officer tells Jesse that Ray has done this before. And this is where I really start, again, I think it's the thing we talked about earlier, we alluded to. Maybe the biggest plot hole or just kind of suspension of disbelief. So the officer basically tells Jesse that he did it because he had to feed him, which is Satan, candy. That's the reason he's doing this whole thing.
Because, yeah, he did the same thing or tried to do the same thing when he was 12 and the kid was 9. And then he spent 20 years in a psychiatric institution, which is really serious. And then you mean to tell me he's going to hang out in the same town and they aren't even going to keep tabs on him? As gossipy as a small town is?
Right.
Unofficial tabs even, like.
It doesn't make sense. Like he says that he suggests putting them into witness protection until they can find him. How can they not find this guy? Like he literally is just bumbling around the small town.
He's hanging out at the motel,
Yeah. So they're going to put these people in witness protection, which is like years upon years generally, just because they can't find this giant man who stands out like a sore thumb in this really small town. It's like seeing Longlegs. Like, remember he's at the bus stop? It's like, this guy really stands out. Like, I don't think you're going to have a problem finding him.
But at least that was the FBI. This is like Podunk Town, like
yes.
3-employee county sheriff's department.
Right, exactly. It's completely ridiculous. And then the best part is the next scene, Ray is at a gas station buying a lighter. So this guy is not trying to be, I mean, he clearly isn't capable of like thinking
on
very
CCTV
clearly.
All over the place.
Yeah, like he's buying a lighter. He's a giant man in a red tracksuit who's buying a lighter. Oh, anyway. Meanwhile, at the house, Astrid looks out and sees that Ray has crushed. I kind of like wasn't paying attention closely at this point, but she looks out and basically sees that a female officer was crushed between two cars.
They look out because they hear the crash. Yeah, so Ray crashes one of them, pins him against the car, and then murders the other one with a rock.
That's right. Okay.
So she and Zoe are well aware that like shit's going down now.
Right. And then he picks up the officer's gun and comes inside and then guns down Jesse. I think he shoots him like maybe 2 or 3 times, I want to say.
Before he even gets inside, Jesse's like, run. Why doesn't Zoe and her mom run out the back of the house? Run anywhere, into the woods, wherever.
They seem to have run into like a back room.
They run into a back room with no exit.
Yeah. Terrible idea. So yeah, he guns down Jesse, and then he ends up finding Astrid and Zoe in the back room, fires one shot, which we don't quite know what happens yet, and then drags Zoe out. Then Astrid later comes crawling out all bloody, so we assume she must have gotten shot, and then sees Jesse and, lays down, tries to get Jesse awake. And then Ray comes back with a gas can. This whole scene was very tense because it's in like such a small area, and like that he is just kind of out of his mind at this point and doesn't know what's going on.
Suddenly Ray is moving so fast, so you think of him as like a slow thinker, but now he's really a monster.
Yeah, and he seems to have a plan. Like he has a gas can and he bought a lighter, so he has some cognitive function going on there. And then Astrid mouths, "I love you" to Zoe, and then go back a second here. Ray actually ends up putting the gun up to Astrid's like forehead or face, whatever, and then the gun jams or he runs out of bullets here. Thank goodness.
Zoe's just being held there and she's just having to watch all of this.
Can
you imagine the
that's
trauma
terrible.
that she's already been through and now this?
Yeah, it's really sad. But luckily, the gun jams, and Ray drags Zoe upstairs and starts pouring gas on the steps and lights them up. I thought this was an interesting scene. Like, he was very calculated in doing this. Like, again, like blocking off the entrance to the stairs with fire.
Almost like he had assistance from the beyond.
Oh, you think he may have had an accomplice. And so he lights up the steps, and then Astrid crawls to Jesse again, who's like wakes up after having a vision of Zoe on fire. I mean, this dude looked dead. I know with a lot of horror movies, tough to believe that the person comes back alive, but this was doubtful, I gotta say. But the love of
Yeah.
his family brought him back to life, we'll say. Ray has now created a wall of fire around Zoe's bed with the two of them standing on it, which again, kind of a cool looking scene, I guess. And Ray starts to claim that he can see Satan in the flames. And there's kind of a lot that goes on here. It's like a big action scene kind of at this point.
I feel like smoke inhalation would have killed everybody
Oh
before
yeah, because
any
this
of this
scene
could
goes on for a
happen.
while. Yeah.
So long.
Jesse carries Astrid out. Then Jesse grabs a ladder and goes into Zoe's room. Zoe bites Ray's hand and Jesse punches him repeatedly until Ray jams his finger into one of Jesse's wounds. Yada yada yada. It's a lot of back and forth.
Well, it's a lot of action in the flames.
Yep, a lot of flames, a lot of action.
Like they should all have third-degree burns after this.
Well, Ray ends up on fire walking towards Zoe and Jesse, which was an awesome visual, I gotta say.
That was a good shot.
Yeah. And then, of course, Jesse comes up behind him and just murderfies him with the flying
With
V,
what
just
now?
smashes him over the head.
Chekhov's flying V guitar.
Which, again, any other movie, this would have been so cheesy, but for some reason, it just looked fantastic. And there
It
was
was
so much like
perfect.
CGI in this, but it just looked so good for some reason. It fit the movie really well.
How else is the heavy metal movie going to dispense of its monster?
Absolutely. You need the flames and the flying V, all that stuff. So the room is completely engulfed. Zoe jumps through the flames to her dad. They crawl out the window.
But first, he asks her if she's okay as they're standing there in the flames.
Oh, yeah, I did notice that.
Oh, I hate it when movies do this.
Why don't we reconnect outside of the fire? Then we can figure it out. So they're all fine. They're all on the ground. Jesse wanders off, digs up the suitcases that were buried by Ray.
Very shallowly.
Very
Like,
shallow, yes.
Jesse barely kicks some dust aside, and there's like suitcase handles.
Yeah. And then he looks up, and that's the end of the movie. I think, is it sunny at that point, or he just looks up to the sky? I don't even know.
Yeah, it does look brighter. Like just maybe
Yeah.
they changed the lighting because I think
Mhm.
it's still nighttime. But I want to say the art that they used at the end, along with the heavy metal credits, the fun like metal font,
Uh-huh.
are pretty neat. And then I don't know how long you watched the credits, but
Oh, I didn't.
eventually, I didn't watch all of them the first time, but this time I did. Eventually, they play "For Whom the Bell Tolls" by
Oh.
Metallica. So I thought, how on earth does this indie movie
Mm-hmm.
that was made in Williamson County, Texas,
Yeah.
get permission from this major Metallica hit? Okay, so
Yeah.
I had to look it up. Here's the answer. It turns out they sort of romanced Metallica and gave them an advanced screening of the movie, which they loved.
Yeah.
And then they asked nicely, which I think is kind of funny because Zoe makes a Metallica joke in the car early on
Oh, yeah.
about it being lighter
A little
fare.
mellower. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's
And
funny.
so writer director Sean Byrne ended up getting a great price. And once they got Metallica, they were able to use that to attract all the other bands that
Oh,
contributed to the
yeah.
soundtrack. So that comes from the director himself.
Cool. That's a good fact. I read something about that, and I think they're quoted as saying like it's like getting the blessing of the Beatles or something. Like it's that same idea where
The
like no,
Beatles of metal or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Beatles of metal. Uh-huh. Yeah. No, that's so cool. There's a lot of
Yeah.
really cool like facts about this movie that I enjoyed reading about. But yeah, that's the ending. What did you think of I guess the third act, the whole ending there, Stacy?
So I love an ending that is very near all out chaos. And
Uh-huh.
the fire can't help but accomplish that in part. And while I definitely prefer a dark ending in general where everybody dies, I was definitely rooting for Zoe in this story because there was so much character development about her and her parents. And another thing is like, I feel like as cash poor metalheads with a starving artist father and kind of a non-traditional family anyway, like they were already underdogs, so it would have been wrong for them to die. Like it's not like they were a cookie cutter family that you could easily sacrifice at the end of a
Right.
ghost story. So I was glad that they all lived. I definitely would not have wanted Ray to get away though and continue
No.
kidnapping and murdering. I think it's best for him that he's put out of his misery as well. So I think it was
Yeah.
the right ending for everyone. And as far as how it played out, like once got into the house, like it really ramped up. I guess as soon as he arrived at the house and
Right.
attacked the officers, you know, we went from feeling like things are temporarily safe to, oh shit,
Yeah.
and the tension never backed down from that. And for me, the fear, these things scare me. Some people may say not scary at all, but it's one of my real life fears, the home invasion thing. So it was very effective for me since I didn't manage to avoid watching
Nice. So what you're saying is you want to watch a whole bunch of home invasion movies coming up.
it.
Home Invasion September.
One at a time.
I thought the ending, I thought it was like the perfect ending. I mean, it wasn't surprising to me at all, but that's kind of fine. It's kind of what I expected, and it did it right. I gotta say, I also like a bit of more of a nihilistic ending, but I was rooting for this family. I didn't want any of them to meet
Right.
their demise. So
That would have just been sadistic of the
yeah, it would have been kind of a
filmmakers.
bummer.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the rating portion. Would you like to give your
Yeah.
rating first, or should I go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, first disclaimer. I feel bad even rating this because, as you know, I don't like home invasion plots in general, and I definitely stay away from kidnapping as a plot element just for like my own trauma and reasons. I also generally dislike how intellectually disabled individuals are portrayed as violent and or dangerous. Same thing with mentally ill characters. But the problem is I'm often not even sure myself where to draw the line. I'll try to explain what I mean. So, on one hand, I think mentally ill people and intellectually disabled, for that matter, should be represented in horror like anyone else with any disability. So I mean, that could be a positive. But it's also a kind of gray area when you have like any fantasy elements like horror,
Hmm.
like supernatural horror. So where you have like a person that's mentally ill, say, but they are also demonically possessed, and the
Right.
possession is what makes them evil. Or the other scenario, it's just the possession that's making them mentally ill. So with
Hmm.
Ray, we don't really know which came first or what happened. We
Yeah,
only
it's a
know
good
the end
point.
result, and we only know about his behavior. And I do think they did their best to make him as sympathetic as possible. Like, we feel bad that he's possessed. He does have to die. He is a
Right.
monster. And I do actually like many of these kinds of stories, and I'm not sure if I'm just rationalizing them as not being ableist because I like them. I just want to like come clean, full disclosure. So I would be interested in hearing like what listeners think about this movie and this issue in general as well, especially like any listeners with mental health struggles themselves. But all that aside, there is a lot to like about this movie as a movie. Just the opening with the strumming of that chord and the repetition of the demon voice, like pretty effectively spooky for not very much money.
Hmm.
And they didn't have to license anything to play that chord over and over.
That's true.
I like that the house after the opening events of the movie, like the house seemed to be like an upbeat place. Like it didn't look like a haunted house at all. And then the family moves in, like they all start off in a relatively like good, happy place. And I mean happy place like mentally, emotionally, as far
Yeah.
as their relationships with each other. So many of these movies start with a fucked up relationship or like an alienated, brooding
One of them is like
teenage
an
kid.
ex like alcoholic or something,
Yes.
is falling off
Also,
the
one of them's
wagon.
got secrets that the other one could
Yes.
never find out about. So this was a really nice and wholesome, um, wholesome as you can get in horror. Um, an unexpected, like, sort of family dynamic. And I like the fact that it all worked out for them in the end. And yeah, they're going to be traumatized, but, they all have each other. They're still alive. Of course, I like to see my home state represented as much as I hate living here. And I am, of course, talking about hell and the representation of hell in the movie. Uh, the acting was good, despite how much I hated some elements of the plot, which I feel is going to unfairly reflect in my rating. And I don't know how to get around that.
Hey, your rating's your rating.
You face these same difficulties
I do.
yourself, so I
Yeah.
hope you understand.
Hmm.
So overall, I give it 3 screams out of 5 on the scream scale. What did you think, Bill?
I thought you were going to go lower than that. I thought this was going to
I
be
I
like
thought I
Club
might
Dread level the
also.
way you were talking about that.
I really considered it, but there was so much good acting, just good movie making, good script.
Yeah. Do you take past film ratings into consideration yet? Does that play into your mind at all?
Not in any organized way. I think
Okay.
eventually I should start doing that. But
Oh,
then I'd
not
need to
even a
have
should. I'm
like
just curious because there's so many different ways to approach these things. I get
I
my
didn't
head
have a
about some of
list of them.
these.
I'd have to go back and listen.
Oh, I've got a list of them.
That's probably in my notes for
Yeah.
some of them at least.
Well, I gotta say, this was a super wonderful surprise. Again, I'd never heard or seen this movie. I love Ethan Embry in like everything I've ever seen him in. Just a really good cast, like you said, on such a shoestring budget. Really smart way to make a movie and to make it an hour 20 or whatever it is. I thought that was the perfect length because we talked about this a little bit in Long Legs, where I'm actually thinking like that movie is a little too short. I wish they would have
Mhm.
fleshed some stuff out.
So much going on in it.
Yeah, exactly. This movie was simple, but not like too simple, just a really good story. And like I kind of mentioned or alluded to earlier, they could have gone so far into like the art world stuff, and I'm so glad they didn't. That was probably like 5 minutes of the movie. Or the daughter trying to adjust to a new school, which I've seen that a million times.
Oh
We
my
don't
God,
need that.
yes.
Not a big piece there. We don't even really know much about the wife, but that's totally okay because it doesn't matter with this plot. It's a very simple plot. The
Yeah,
guy who played Ray plays a very similar character in Identity, and I think he does a great job in both of those. And he's just a very physically kind of imposing stature to him, which I think helps the movie. And the artwork for this movie, that's what really grabbed me because I'm like, this has some
incredible.
style to it that like
Yeah.
I think it's Zoe, right? Is like a cart and the cartoon flames on the front.
Uh-huh.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And I don't have much bad to say about this movie. It was like a really pleasant, quick watch, and I give it 3.5 out of 5 screams, which is kind of like my middle ground.
So that's 3.25 for The Devil's Candy. The podcast compels you. I would like to see another movie written and directed by Mr. Sean Byrne, but now it's been almost 10 years. Do we think that
Oh,
we'll be getting another one? I didn't look into that.
10 years. Yeah, that's rough. Although this movie did get pretty good reviews. I'm kind of surprised he hasn't been
Won some
given another shot at
awards.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, hopefully we get something.
It's just hard to make movies. I
Yeah.
mean, who knows how many things he's got in the pipeline that
Right. That's
haven't
true.
panned out. But I won't beat that dead horse, which is a saying that I hate saying. I don't know why that came out of my
You got
mouth.
to replace it with something.
Oof.
That's your homework for next time.
Well, that's a wrap on our two-part series, Sinister Slayers with the Supernatural Something Something. We danced with the man downstairs at Long Legs. We rocked out with Chekhov's Flying V guitar in The Devil's Candy. In general, we've explored what happens when sinister forces turn vulnerable individuals into murderers. But things are about to take a fantastic turn. I'm so sorry. I had to get that one in. For our next series, we're sinking our teeth into non American vampire flicks in our next two-parter, Vampires Without Borders. We'll be
Yes.
kicking that off with a chilly classic from Sweden, Let the Right One In. This one has all the gory goodness you crave with a side of icy Scandinavian atmosphere and a story that's as tender as it is disturbing. So sharpen your stakes and get ready for a pair of undead destinations you won't dare to miss out on.
Love it. I'm looking forward to doing that when it's been a long time since I've seen it. So should be a
Been a
good
long time
discussion.
since I've seen any vampire movie at all because they're generally not my thing, except for Abigail. So
Yeah.
there's
I'm
that.
not huge into vampire movies either, but I'm excited because I remember this one being good.
They got so overdone
Yeah,
during our growing up in like
true.
lifetimes.
In the meantime, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Leave us a rating, and until next time, stay scary.
Yeah.